Hello and welcome back to the Chelsea Chronicle, the show where we're trying to keep calm through the storm that is the last week of the transfer window. I'm Jack Drury, joined by the man who thinks we're just one signing away from competing for that Premier League title, Mr. James Shearman. How are we doing, my friend?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. A lot better than we were last week after the Palace game with the West Ham game now in the books. Today we're looking ahead to a really big week at Stamford Bridge. We've got the West London derby against Fulham and then transfer deadline day on Monday. So we're going to be asking who's the one player that Chelsea still need to sign this summer and how we're going to stop Fulham nicking points at the Bridge like they did last season. James, we'll have a quick rundown of the West Ham game. Biggest story from off the pitch was that Cole Palmer had pulled out in the warm-up. And the big story at the end was that we didn't really need him.
Yeah, exactly. I think if you remember last week, I said I wasn't so optimistic about the West Ham game after the poor result against Palace. And when I saw that Palmer wasn't playing as well, I thought, we could be in trouble. But I was concerned. But yeah, you're totally right. We didn't need him at all. Everyone else stepped up. I thought Esteval did especially well, considering that he didn't know he was starting until 10, 15 minutes before kickoff. So, yeah, really positive game. And now I'm as a typical football fan that's oh so fickle. I'm now looking forward to the Fulham game, full of confidence.
We saw João Pedro play slightly deeper. He was already set to start a bit deeper anyway before Palmer was ruled out. But he played in that number 10 role. And as well as his goal, some of the creativity he had in there was really sort of Palmer-esque at times, wasn't it?
I think part of the reason we signed him is that he can play up front in the number 10 and probably on the wings as well. So, yeah, he really did step up. And I've seen a lot of fans say now that perhaps we need to sign a striker instead so that he can play that number 10 role more often. I'm not so sure about that, but yeah, he was brilliant in that role. And yeah, it gives you confidence that with Palmer injured, Chelsea should still be fine against most teams.
So we've seen sort of two very different performances now from Chelsea, the Palace one and the West Ham one. Do you think the one against West Ham is more we can expect for the majority of the season, or is it more a case of just how bad West Ham were?
I think it has to be a mix of both. West Ham obviously have started dreadfully. They lost against Wolves in the Cup recently as well. So, I mean, how long's Graham Potter going to last there? It doesn't seem like he'll be there at Christmas, that's for sure. So probably a mix of both. Not every game will be as easy as that. But I think we saw in the Club World Cup and we saw in the limited pre-season that we had that there are goals in this team that can be shared around, not just with Palmer. So, yeah, I think things are looking good going forward. Hopefully have a good result against Palace and pick up some momentum for after the international break.
So with the Palmer injury, we'll get into sort of the crux of today's podcast where we're talking about the one player Chelsea still need before Monday. They've been linked to a fair few attackers still, despite the ones who've already been brought in this summer. I'm going to come to you first on this. Do you think the player we need is going to be someone maybe to replace Palmer if he has got a bit of a more long-term problem, or are you going somewhere else on the pitch completely?
I think we do need an attacking player, but not because of the Palmer injury. I thought we needed one anyway. And it doesn't seem like Palmer will be out too long. So I don't think we need a like-for-like replacement for him. I think it's been clear that Chelsea need a left winger. That's why they brought in Gittins, but they're also still looking at Garnacho. And I think that is the one position. Perhaps goalkeeper as well, but there aren't many of those on the market, especially now that Donnarumma's potentially heading to Manchester City. So I think left winger is probably the position that Chelsea need to go after in the remaining days of the window. And I don't think the Palmer injury has much to do with that.
If you would put a name out there as your dream signing right now, who are you going to go for? I'm not sure Garnacho would be the most popular amongst a large section of Chelsea fans, but what do you think?
No, I actually feel not so negative about the Garnacho signing as most Chelsea fans. I think for 30, 40 million pounds, it wouldn't be a bad shout. But the player that I'm going for that Chelsea need to sign is Kaoru Mitoma from Brighton. And the Brighton owner, Tony Bloom, has said that Chelsea are his best customers. And so why not go back there once more? People can laugh that Chelsea always go back to the same place, but Cucurella and Moises Caicedo have turned out to be two of our best players. And I think Mitoma is 28 years old. So he's in his prime. It would go against the model that we've been going for lately, but I think that wouldn't be a bad thing. Premier League proven. He scored 10 goals last season. And crucially, he's only got 2 years left on his contract. So the fee shouldn't be much more than, say, 50, 60 million pounds. And I think he would really, as a direct winger that can go 1-to-1 against the opposition's fullbacks, I think he would provide a really exciting threat to the left wing, which would also be probably a more reliable starter than Gittins at this moment on time, and maybe Tyreek George moves on. But yeah, Matoma would be my slightly rogue shout for the rest of the window.
Yeah, I can't say I saw that one coming. Obviously we've got Pedro this summer from Brighton as well, so there'd be that sort of understanding between the two already in attack. And it does sound like with Gittins looking like he needs a little bit of time to properly come through as the number one player in that role. Maybe having someone with a bit more experience could be almost perfect for him, rather than a Garnacho who's around the same age and experience level.
Exactly, yeah. And you've got Esteval on the other wing that's also, coming through, and he's shown great signs already, but it's probably important to bed him in more slowly than to chuck him in at the deep end. I actually thought Pedro Neto was really good on the left wing against West Ham, but we know that he probably prefers to cut in from the right. So I think a left wing's definitely necessary. And yeah, someone that can start right away that we don't have to worry about adjusting to the Premier League would be ideal, in my opinion.
I'm going to look to the other end of the pitch for mine. You mentioned it briefly when you were talking about yours and the goalkeeper. I think it's just going to be so difficult to build a title-winning team with Robert Sanchez in goal. And I think I'm more of a fan of Sanchez than many people are. But even the goal in the West Ham game, something didn't look right about the way he tried to save it, and it didn't seem. You need to install confidence in your defense, especially a young defense, and I don't think he's the one to do that. So I'm going to go for Donnarumma. I know you mentioned that Man City are very keen on him as well. It's not going to be a bank breaker, for considering he's one of the best players in his position in the world at 26, 27 years old, and it would also go against the model of the wages. If you take in what he's reportedly looking to earn at his new club, it's going to be one of our highest earners. But I think there are some positions where you need to go against your model, which has been really successful so far, but go against it and get in one of the best players in the world in a position where you probably is probably the weakest for you at the minute.
My only question with Donnarumma would be, is he good enough with his feet? And now me or you might say that, what does that matter when you're a world-class shot stopper? But we know in a Maresca team, he's going to ask him to play out at the back from pretty much any situation. So I'm just wondering whether that would be a concern for you, or whether, his world-class saving is the most important thing.
It would. I think his numbers aren't particularly amazing for passing. And I think also it would be important to be able to play these long passes that Sanchez, to his credit, seems to have really added to his game since the Club World Cup, pretty much. So that is definitely something that would need to be looked at. And if it's not something he's going to be exceeding at, then maybe you would look elsewhere or look to stick with Sanchez. But I think the whole putting confidence in your team from the back is so important. With teams like Liverpool with Alisson, there's never any doubt with them that he's ever going to let them down. And I think that's one thing we're really lacking at the minute. And in big games where big moments can almost decide titles or place in the top four and things like that, you need a top shot stopper. And I don't think we have one at the minute.
Yeah, I agree. I'd be very happy to see him come in, that's for sure.
Okay, let's move on. Let's have a quick look towards Fulham at the weekend. A team that we had some entertaining games with last season. I mean, both teams, one of them scoring in the 95th, 96th minute. And the one that Pedro Neto scored really got Chelsea's top four charge underway at the back end of the season. What are you expecting from Fulham? We also know they got Anthony Robinson at left back, who is kind of similarly important to them as Cucurella is for us. Are you expecting him to be a key man? We've got Muniz up front as well. What are you expecting from there?
Yeah, I think they're a tricky opponent, defensively solid, and they'll probably sit back and look to soak up pressure. So our attackers, again, especially without Palmer being able to unlock those defences, they'll really need to be on their A game. And yeah, Anthony Robertson is probably one of the best left backs in the league. So for that reason, I would start Reece James. I know Maresca's probably trying to protect him, but with the international break coming up, hopefully he doesn't play too many minutes for England. So I would get Reece James in there to deal with Fulham's left hand side, and Gusto can take to the bench.
And would you perhaps look to play someone other than Esteval on the right if you're really looking to, if they're going to start doubling up Robinson as well as the winger? Do you think we need more than one tracking back with it?
I suppose you could go with Neto on that right hand side because you know what you're going to get from him, 100% effort all the time. But actually, I think Esteval's probably young enough and can probably be moulded into the player that Maresca wants him to be. So, yeah, I would start him on the right, and I would trust him to put in the shift that he'll need to deal with Robinson on Fulham's left hand side.
Okay, and if we're talking score predictions, then I don't think either of us have been particularly successful with these so far. What are you seeing happening? Because if we win the game, we'll go top of the league for about an hour or so, which would be a good marker to put down, at least in the early stages.
Yeah, it certainly would, and I'm predicting Chelsea to do exactly that. I think it'll be a narrower victory than West Ham. I think Fulham pose probably a bit more of a threat going forward, and they will be harder to break down. West Ham was so open in that game, and so for that reason, I'm going to go 2-1 Chelsea. Potentially go 2 goals up, and then for us to be hanging on at the end and maybe concede a late goal, but Chelsea to get the job done, I think.
Yeah, I think we seem to have a lot less attacking fluidity when we play at home, whether it's because teams are sort of more inclined to sit back and sort of soak it up because they know they've got a chance to hit us on the counter. I was also leaning towards a 2-1, I think. I think we may even go behind. It might be a real slow start again, but I think there'll be enough coming through in the second half. And I say that in slight confidence, more than it would have been last week, especially. But that's us done for another week. Fulham on Saturday and then the chaos of transfer deadline day on Monday. We picked a player that we think Chelsea need to sign before then. Now it's your turn. Drop your deadline day dream signings in the comments along with your score prediction for the West London derby. Don't forget to like, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss our deadline day reaction. Up the Chelsea and let's hope for goals and one more big signing.